Hello, everyone. We're just getting everything set up for tonight. We have a really awesome live that is going to be here tonight on Instagram with Leona Morgan, who's been doing a lot of the on-the-ground organizing against nuclearization here in New Mexico. So I'm just getting everyone online, and here in the next couple of minutes, we should be getting started. I don't know
Oh my, I'm
why.
so
Okay,
sorry.
there
I
we go.
was spacing out.
No, you're fine. I'm still trying to figure out
Oh,
where
okay. I thought
Josie
I was late.
is.
I
I'm
know we're
trying.
late, but come on, Josie. Okay.
No, you're totally fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why it went. There we go. Okay, sweet.
Is my thing the correct way? Does it say no uranium or is it backwards?
It is backwards, but it's also pretty far zoomed in. So we can really only see
Oh,
yellow
really?
and yeah, I can't really tell. Oh, it's the yeah, we can
Okay.
really only see the logo.
So you can't see the junk at the top? Okay,
Only
that's
when you
weird. Okay,
tilt
I'm
it
trying
up.
to still. Sorry.
There we go. No worries. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Jonathan Juarez Alonso. I'm the policy lead for Yucca. We have a really awesome presentation for everyone tonight about some really exciting legislation that finally, after years and years of a really long fight to get this pushed through, we finally have really impactful and meaningful climate legislation that passed just a few weeks ago. So I'm going to, first give space for everyone to introduce themselves, and then we'll kind of hop into, our questions, and it'll be kind of a little bit like an interview about the legislation. But yeah, I'll pass it real quick to Josie to introduce herself real quick,
Hi,
and then
I'm
we'll go ahead
Josie
and go over
Zuna,
to Leona.
new member of Yucca, and I'm coming to you all out of the Permian Basin. I'm super excited to be here with you guys today.
And I'm Leona Morgan, not HA, Twitch 18 Nishlet, and obviously Bush's Chinti Ani Dashite Tuaglini Dashanella. I'm in Albuquerque, and yeah, I'm excited to talk about the bill. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I just realized I forgot to mention I'm from the pueblos of Laguna and Isleta, but I do currently reside here in Albuquerque in southern Tiwa territory. And yeah, so thank you so much again for joining us. I know it's been a hectic time of year for all of us. But I think our first question to start us off this evening is going to be, can you explain, what this legislation does and how it
Yes.
impacts New Mexico?
And I just want to say thank you. I have not done anything live in a long time, so I appreciate everyone who's out there waiting, and apologies for my camera work. The bill, we call it SB 53, so Senate Bill 53. It was, should I go do a quick background of the project or just talk about the bill? So,
Yeah,
the
totally.
bill is about a nuclear waste dump. So I'll just explain that first. There's a proposal to bring all of the waste from all of the nuclear power plants to New Mexico. We call this CIS, Consolidated Interim Storage. So right now in the whole United States and many countries in the world, there's nowhere to put waste from the power plants. So the United States, they're trying to figure this out. In the meantime, nuclear companies, they sue the federal government to recoup the expenses for storing the waste on site. So there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of history there with the Price-Anderson Act and other things. But in New Mexico, the way this affects us is a company in the southeast part of the state called Eddie Lee Energy Alliance. So this is made up of New Mexico elected officials. There's some people, legislators, people from Carlsbad and Hobbs, decision makers from these communities who have this LLC they invited Holtec to come to New Mexico and build this nuclear waste dump. And the proposal is they will set up the waste dump temporarily until the United States figures out what to do with it permanently. So there's no permanent place to put the waste. So that's why this is interim. So CIS, interim, meaning the design is only for a temporary 40-year permit, which they can extend twice, which means over 100 years. In the meantime, bringing in a lot of waste from all over the country. And the idea is they will transport it on the railroads to southeast New Mexico. This is about just a little ways from Carlsbad, east of Carlsbad. If anyone's ever heard of WIP, the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, that's a different waste dump. It's for weapons waste. This is only 14 miles north of WIP. So there's already another waste dump. And this is a new facility. It doesn't exist. There's nothing there. But it's a second facility. So I won't talk about the one in Texas, but it's only 40 miles to the east, inside the Texas state line. So there's two dumps, both temporary, both for nuclear power plant waste, that have similar ideas of 40 years temporarily that can be extended twice. Anyways, there's two of them. Tonight, I'm only talking about Holtec, and the bill is really it's really focused on New Mexico. So the bill doesn't even impact the Texas dump. Okay, so going back to the proposal, I'll finish now. So the proposal is to bring all the waste from all the nuclear power plants by rail to New Mexico temporarily until the U.S. figures out what to do with it permanently. And then when they figure out that permanent place, then to move the waste a second time. So that means anyone on the rail line, any communities along the rail lines will be impacted, at risk of accidents nationwide. But in New Mexico, we will be really impacted because it will be coming here and then moving again. And we don't have, there's a lot of things that we could talk about with the issues, lack of emergency preparedness, blah, blah, blah. And then of course the rail accidents that we all saw just recently. The railroads are not in any shape to be transporting this stuff. Okay, so the bill, I'll try to do this quickly. Senate Bill 53 was introduced by Senators Steinborn, Representative McQueen, and others like Representative Sariñana, who has been very instrumental in helping with some of the nuclear problems. So thank you to them. And of course, the governor who supported this all along. The bill, what it does is it prohibits state permits for this facility. So this facility, the CIS facility, Senate Bill 53, which was already signed into law by the governor on the same day it passed, which was on the final Friday of this past legislative session. So the bill, it prohibits state permits. So that means any permits Holtec needs that the state would issue for a facility, building, construction, stuff like that. So it makes it, so basically it prohibits the state from giving these permits unless the state consents. So that's really important. Who defines consent? Is that defined? That's another huge conversation to have. And so this is a new law for our state in New Mexico. And it's a big deal because we as a state are telling the federal government, no, we don't want to be dumped on again. And so that was a huge success. Everyone worked together on it. Lots of thank yous to all kinds of entities, big and small. And you all, of course, did a lot of work. So some of you were on every committee hearing. And I think that was very important. And I appreciate Yucca and everyone who helped. You all were there the whole time. And even doing this after, this report back is great. So thanks.
Yeah, of course. And then I think I'll go ahead and pass it to Josie
first of
for a second
all, I just want to say thank you so much for the work you've been doing, Leona. I mean, it means so much to everyone. I mean, statewide and especially to me personally here, living so close to where the Holtec site would be. I know my family and all of our neighbors who live close to the tracks are certainly thankful. So big thank you for that. And now I'm wondering, what has happened to your bill this session and in past sessions while the bill was trying to get through?
Okay, yeah. So this is not the first year, and Yeah, thank you for saying that. Just so you all know, I did a lot of work on uranium mining on the Navajo Nation, and we're still dealing with that. And of course, in New Mexico, we have so many nuclear facilities, and you all down in the southeast. I mean, there's Urenco, there's WCS. I mentioned WIP, and then this is part related to your question. So there's a lot of stuff already down there, but some of the challenges in the past, because the bill has been introduced before in different forms. I think we even had a memorial a while back. And I've worked with many organizations and individuals. I don't want to name any because I know I'll forget some. I used to be a part of many organizations. And I just want to give a shout out to Eastern Navajo Diné Against Uranium Mining. I'm wearing my old INDOM t-shirt. This was one of my first anti-nuke organizations. It's a Navajo group fighting uranium mining. Anyways, so in the southeast part of the state, these legislators, again, I mentioned Eddie Lee Energy Alliance. So these are people in positions of power, and on previous tries, you know, people like them blocked the bill. They basically were like, we don't, you know, they were saying, as lawmakers, some of them were saying, you know, New Mexico needs jobs and we have a brain drain and we don't want our kids to go far away for jobs. We want our kids to be at home. And we, you know, they have this idea, they keep talking about a nuclear sector. So like, oh, we want to create blah, blah, blah. And we understand we can use this waste for making new energy, and how great would it be that we make money off of it and our kids can have jobs, and like the stuff they were talking about. So over the years, these are some of the conversations people were having that told us what they are planning maybe behind closed doors. So reprocessing, other nuclear things. So they're the ones that have stopped the bill in the past, and it's really become a fight about, you know, being pro-nuclear or not, you know, anti-nuclear, and then people using the climate argument, people using different arguments. That is, you know, it's kind of funny because sometimes we have the same arguments. So people are saying, oh, we need it for economic diversity, we need it for jobs, but a lot of people, I bet you can speak to this, Josie. I mean, do we want our kids, I don't have kids personally, but do we want our people to have these jobs that are going to kill them? And do we want to invest in this kind of economy? Do we want to keep suffering the environmental impacts that radioactive contamination creates, which lasts generations? I don't want that, and I don't think the majority of New Mexicans want that. And this session was the first time we saw a lot of people come out in huge numbers. Like in the past, it was a lot of us, the same faces. I hate to say preaching to the choir, but a lot of times we're preaching to the choir. We're a small community fighting the nuclear facilities. But this year, it was a lot of groups, not just the anti-nuke groups. There was big environmental groups, indigenous nations. So it was like everybody who stood up and said, no, we don't want this. But yeah, that's what happened in the past. Was we didn't have enough people standing up and calling, and like you getting on the Zoom, and people in Santa Fe talking to legislators face to face. I think that was the most important thing, was to have people in the roundhouse, and there was a lot of folks there. But yeah, that's what happened. Some folks killed it because they want more nuclear stuff. So we got to keep watching them, and we got to keep on it.
Right. Thank you so much for your answer. I'm going to go ahead and pass back.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leona. And this is, you know, something I'm really curious about because, as you've mentioned, it's been, you know, a multi-year-long fight to get this legislation passed. But our third question this evening is, what are some major obstacles that this legislation faced as it moved through our legislature in this year and previous years?
I kind of touched on it, like the idea of being anti-nuclear in the state of New Mexico. And this is something I've heard. This is a lot of the things I'm saying. This is not original. These are not original thoughts, because this is an issue that's been here a long time. And so because we have Los Alamos National Labs and we have Sandia National Labs, there's a lot of money coming into the state. a friend of mine, an elder from Acoma, says that we're addicted to nuclear money. New Mexico is addicted to these federal dollars and nuclear monies because of the labs and all of the other facilities, and that we, in order to really protect ourselves, we need to get off this federal mechanism. And I know that some of the nations, maybe, I don't want to say specifically, but I know some indigenous nations in the whole country, there's some tribes that have agreements with the Department of Energy because of their location and their homelands in conjunction with some of these facilities. And so it makes it harder for them to fight the federal government because of that, which means it's the same for us. It makes it harder for us to fight these facilities because of the federal funding that comes to our state. And so even UNM, I'm a graduate student at the university. I got my bachelor degree there. It's a nuclear research facility. And that's something I heard as a student, and this is before I was an activist. I thought, oh, wow, I'm not going to get involved with that. I don't know what that means. And here I am, and I'm totally involved in it, and I know what it means. You know, I understand the whole state where we got to make a lot of changes because these facilities can't exist without taxpayer dollars. And taxpayer funding is something, how do we control that? How do we stop all this funding to make more bombs and more contamination on the reservation or over where Josie lives? So these are some of the things and challenges that we're going to face the rest of our lives as New Mexicans. I mean, this is what we've inherited because of the decision makers before us. I'm not excited about lobbying and being in Santa Fe. I don't know if you all like doing that. It's more fun to be at home educating our people and doing things we want to do in our community. But in order to do that, we have to engage in the system. I think so. I mean, some people want to fight the system and do their different ways of whatever they do, you know, and I support that. But for me in New Mexico, I think the legislature was one avenue. It was just one strategy. And there's a lot of other things I think people can be doing all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I really think of really what you just said, that this is, you know, our lives are even just, you know, a continuation in this fight against carbon and nuclear colonialism here in New Mexico. The ways that these industries prey on frontline communities, communities of color, low income communities. It's just, you know, the continuation of this, you know, generation long fight against these industries. But yeah, I'll go ahead and pass
we've
it over
been
to
wondering
Josie.
what were some tactics that helped move things along for you guys and get the bill through?
Yeah, well, so this is going back just to what Jonathan said and some of the work that's been done by our elders and people before us. There's a lot of things that we did during the session that helped. There's a lot of things that we could say, okay, you can use this strategy and tactic, make these phone calls, use social media. I think you all do all of those things already and you're great at it. And I think you all know the answer to the question better than me in today's world. But I mean, this is my first Instagram anything. I just set up the account, 20 minutes ago. But the reality is the work that helped to make it happen, I think, was put in place long before the legislature even started. So Senator Steinborn has been introducing this bill for several years, but even before him, there was other people that did a lot of work. And so I think that's something that we have to realize. It takes a long time. It doesn't just happen in one session. I think some people get really lucky and they get a bill to pass. My first experience was fighting a bill. And so that's very common, that we're always fighting and we're trying to get people in the legislature. So I think some of the things were that people were there in person. That's the most important thing. Phone calls and Zoom are important as well, especially when you don't know when to get on Zoom, so you were really good about that, Josie, and everybody who participated, they were amazing at being ready. but it takes a lot of the previous engagement. So going, I think, to the interim committee hearings. So like right now, the legislature, those committees only meet annually. Between those committees, there's another committee called the Radioactive and Hazardous Materials Committee. I don't know if you all heard about that. So for short, it's Radioactive and Hazardous Materials Committee, RHMC. That committee meets every, I think, quarter in the year, and then it goes to different communities throughout the state. And so it hears from local people and it hears from the industry. And I think those are things that people can get involved in between the legislature, where they can build relationships with some of the elected officials, as well as educate other people there. So it's really important to be involved year round, to be educating people all the time. It's not just something that, we did during this 60-day session or this 30-day session. So I think for me, there was a lot of people who helped for the first time, really, really engaging. So even though I'm saying it takes all the years of experience, some groups put in a lot of work for the first time they were there. And I think that made a huge difference. So it's a combination of both. Like some of the work that was done, I say goes back to my college days. College for me was 20 years ago. So that's how far back some of the relationships went in order to make some of the things happen throughout the years. But I can't be specific about that. That's my personal story. There's a lot of people who have put in years of work, and educating different people in the legislature is very important. But I think, like I said, there's a lot of folks who jumped in for the first time, and that also made a difference. So yeah, I think all of it. The number one thing is communication and education, I think, which is what you all are doing. So thank you.
Right. Well, that is a fantastic answer, because that lets us know what the groundwork is and how much work really goes into these type of things. So thank you for that answer. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it back.
Yeah, so, I think that this is a little bit, it's easy to think that this is self-explanatory, but I definitely also want to, just hear what you have to say, and also hear, your vision. So how does this bill facilitate or, move us towards a larger vision of a just transition away from an extractive economy? And, personally, what is your vision for that?
I'm looking at the clock. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how much time do you all have? And yeah, that's a good question. So I have my personal vision for what I think could happen and what I hope to happen. Obviously, it doesn't include nuclear in any kind of future. So that's a tall order that I don't think I'll see manifest in my lifetime. So my personal vision is that New Mexico has a plan in place for dealing with these, the past contamination, and then all of these ongoing facilities. And then the big vision is that we are prepared for what's coming next that we are not aware of. Right now, I think there's a lot of information that folks might not have regarding either just transition or renewables or clean energy, things like that. We need to be educated because there's a lot of propaganda about nuclear being clean or carbon free or carbon neutral. So these are kind of like words folks should be aware of. I know there's a lot of words like greenwashing, and false solutions is a term I hear a lot. Actually, I'm beginning to use the term false solutions. So there's a lot of terminology and language. The bottom line is, I think everyone who understands extraction and uranium mining, it's also an issue when we're talking about renewable energies. So right now, people are talking about electric cars, and even solar and wind, I think, are great. But how do we harness the energy? So there's a lot of talk about lithium batteries, and we have indigenous relatives in Nevada that are fighting a lithium mine at a sacred site they call Pimaha. And so they just went to court in January. So when we say just transition, we really need to be aware, and renewables, you know, ask the questions where, yeah, it's renewable energy, but where are they sourcing this and that? What community is this going to impact? So it's not like everything is just going to turn out, you know, perfect. There are going to be repercussions. So I don't know about an actual transition. I keep advocating for reducing our consumption. So for nuclear specifically, the industry always says, oh, well, we need nuclear because it's reliable, blah, blah, blah. The sun doesn't shine all the time, or the wind doesn't shine, or the wind doesn't blow all the time. But in New Mexico, yeah, the sun shines quite a bit. And we were not in the top 10 for producing solar energy in recent years, but I think it was Connecticut, this tiny little state in the Northeast, they were in the top 10 for producing solar energy. So we can change, we can transition, we can use cleaner energies, but I just want to say we have to consider what the repercussions are to other communities, and that nuclear is not clean or renewable. And so, yeah, I know that's a long-winded answer, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to go ahead and
Moving
pass it to
forward,
Jason.
what does Senate Bill 53's passing mean for the future of the anti-nuclear movement?
That's something I think we're all going to see play out. I don't think anybody knows. If I got a plug, I thought my phone was plugged in. Sorry about that. Good thing I got my plug. This is my hope, as I'm trying to be an optimist, because I'm very much a realist. So I'll give you two answers. I think as a realist, in my experience, it's possible to say this might not do anything for the movement. I mean, we stopped a new uranium mine. Not many people know about that. This nuclear waste dump has been stopped in New Mexico before. They called it MRS, near Mescalero, or it had to do with the Mescalero folks down south. I don't know how many people remember that victory. WIP was fought for a long time, but it was still built. And there were many victories, and even today there's still victories on WIP. WIP is a constant fight. So the realist in me says, okay, well, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is still going to give the license. So in Texas, the state passed a similar law, and the NRC gave the license 5 days later. So it didn't change the situation. The mine, that nuclear waste dump has not started, just FYI. But for me, knowing the federal government still needs a place to put the waste, we still need to put it somewhere. That doesn't mean it has to come to New Mexico. So we still have this problem of all this waste at all these power plants that it needs to go somewhere. So right now we're just saying, not in New Mexico. This is a bad idea. This is a bad plan. But the reality is, I'm hoping, and this is the optimist part of me, we're finally having some real conversations in the legislature. One of the legislators was talking about, well, can we pass this bill and still be pro-nuclear? So they agree it's a bad plan. It's a bad plan for New Mexico, but this particular person wants to still support nuclear developments. He didn't specify energy or weapons, but to me, they're the same. You have to talk about both, and they both come from uranium. So for me, what does this mean for the movement? I think on an optimist level, on that scale, we saw so many people come together. We saw so many people speak up, and we saw the legislature, it was kind of divided 50-50 because of the Republicans. So it was very much a partisan issue. But I think because more people had to learn about it, and they realized they can still be pro-nuclear and be against this, I think people understand it's very complicated, and I don't think there's an easy easy way to win this. Nuclear is very complicated, and I think it detracts people. Maybe people don't want to fight nuclear because of how scientific or technical it sounds. But I think the state of New Mexico needs to be educated on all of that so we can protect ourselves from the federal government or these companies like Holtec. Because honestly, I don't want to speak badly about anybody, because it took me a year to learn what is uranium mining, how does it affect us, blah, blah, blah. And I don't expect our legislators to learn that in a 30-day session or 60-day session. So as individuals, it takes a long time to understand uranium and nuclear and radiation. So for me, my hope is that we started to open that conversation, and that we can start to really talk about what do we do with this stuff. And then my personal goal is that we have a plan for all the radioactive waste in the state. That includes abandoned uranium mines. That includes the crap they threw over the mesa at Los Alamos National Labs, and the stuff buried here in town at the Kirtland Air Force Base or the Sandia National Labs. So there's a lot of waste. We have a lot of stuff to deal with.
Right. Thank you for that answer. And I really do appreciate hearing all of the perspectives, such as, we don't know today and there's long term. But I think that these different perspectives are fantastic for, building work for the future. And I personally am optimistic, and I'm so glad to see that this bill has gone through. Because even if just for a couple of months, we can at least figure out new plans for, what Holtec might mean for us. So I'm going to go ahead and pass back to Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of this, Leona. I think of being from Laguna, and particularly being from Pewati, which is just miles away from the Jack Pile uranium mine. Hearing stories from my family members about the impacts that it's had over generations, because our family's been fighting against Jack Pile since the 50s and before that. So this has been a long going fight. And I'm sure, we all have ancestors that are looking down and really proud to see that this legislation has passed. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We wanted to close and give you space to, let us know if there's anything else you want to share with us, anything, upcoming events, calls to actions. I know that there are, this is just one issue of many that we're all in the trenches together with, against or for, whatever it is. But yeah, just give you that space if there's anything you want to add.
So 2 things really quickly. I'm going to try to be quick. I know a lot of you worked on this issue. I want to say thank you. I'm usually working on fighting stuff, and this was one of the first bills we passed that's a good bill. And to have a yes fight, I think, is really important. And you all saw the bill, I forget, HB 12 or something, that had the nuclear stuff. So that's advanced technologies. I think they called it that. So those are words they're using, like funding language for federal programs, which tells us, okay, they're probably looking at this for the future and things that we need to be on the lookout for. So yeah, 2 things real quickly. For people to know, nuclear is not zero carbon or net zero. All that crap is not true. So the reason why is because they only count the carbon footprint of nuclear at the nuclear power plant. They don't count anything before it or anything after it. So that means all the mining, Jack Pile, the Church Rock spill, White Mesa Mill, all these other places that make the fuel and then it's transported all over the world. None of that is counted in the carbon footprint. And then after the power plant, the waste that it makes, first of all, they don't know what to do with it now, so stop making more. But that waste also has to be taken care of forever. And how do you calculate the carbon footprint of forever? So they just don't count it. They don't count how much is it going to take to manage this waste that we made forever. How much is it going to cost? All of that, we don't know. So those are reasons why nuclear cannot be part of any transition, or that's why it's not clean and renewable, aside from all the radioactive waste issues related to our human rights and our health and everything like that. nuclear crosses every issue. So reproductive justice, food sovereignty, water security, blah, 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 blah. We can talk about this forever, but that's the thing I wanted to say is just so everybody knows why nuclear is not a solution, why it's a false solution. Secondly, yeah, I think Yucca and other groups working together have the power to make good laws. And I think New Mexico, your question, Josie, what does this mean for the movement? Well, nationally, people are talking about it. So I'm part of I'm on a lot of conference calls, and this is a national discussion. It made international news. So it's a big deal. And I think New Mexico could be a leader in making good policy. I mean, we have the capacity to do better. And I don't think the state is going to do it on its own. I think all of us know the government is not going to do any of that on its own. So I believe we have to keep doing the policy work. Some people don't like it. Some people don't vote. I vote. I respect the people who don't vote because this is a colonial structure. But I participate in the colonial structure. And then I also go home and, still have my prayers done and things like that. So that's, what we got to do. And yeah, maybe next time we'll be fighting for good laws and regulations, for cleanup and all of that good stuff. So thank you. That's it. Thank you so much, Jonathan and Josie. Really appreciate the space and really appreciate Yucca. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. So thank you so much for spending this time with us this evening, and thanks to everyone who joined over the course of this about hour or so. I will give us some space to close out. I do want to let everyone know before people start leaving, we'll be back tomorrow night at 6 p.m. again with another one of these Instagram lives, and we'll be joined by Chili Ozzy to talk about House Bill 142, which is another really beneficial piece of legislation that we just saw pass this session. And that one is specifically around the remediation of the San Juan coal processing facility and the cleanup of that community. But yeah, thank you so much again, Josie, for co-hosting with me. And thank you so much to Leona for joining us tonight, and everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you. See you guys.